Welcome, everybody, to CFL Weekly Pick'em Show on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. The weekly CFL Pick'em Show is brought to you by Replenishing Care, the future of sports medicine. To check out all the products they offer, go to the website, thegruelingtruth.net, click on the banner at the top of the page. We're week 20 on the CFL Weekly Pick'em Show, and I am your co-host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my other co-host, Brian Schmidt. How you doing, Schmitty?
Doing good.
And four-time great...
Day.
What?
I said it's been a quiet day, so can't argue it.
The only thing you got's the World Series, and every game takes 10.5 hours now with 32 pitching changes. And, of course, CFL legend, four-time Grey Cup winner, Robert Drummond. How you doing, Robert?
Doing pretty good. No complaints except the cold weather's coming to Syracuse, and this is Syracuse if you've never been here before. A lot of snow.
Well, Schmitty's the only one of us in nice weather, probably. All right, let's go ahead and look at what I think was an extremely interesting week in the CFL. And we're going to start off with the Hamilton Tiger Cats at the Ottawa Red Blacks, which was a huge game in a battle for first place. Dominic Davis scored 3 touchdowns in short yardage situations, helping the Ottawa Red Blacks erase a 16-point deficit on the way to a 35-31 win over the Hamilton Tiger Cats on Friday night. Robert, same Ottawa. You never know what you're going to get. And this week we got a Trevor Harris that completed 75% of his passes for 341 yards. William Powell, 21 carries, 87 yards. So now it looks like Ottawa is one of the better teams, at least for this week again.
You know, I mean, I'd say it was more from the come from behind victory it was for Ottawa to give them the psychological advantage now going into the playoffs, and understanding now that when they play up to their potential, they're capable of being the best team, in the East, if not the CFL. It's like you said earlier before the show started. We have teams now posturing, to try and prove that they are the most dominant team in the CFL because no one's taking the reins of that. And for Ottawa, to have a victory like this in a game, they come from behind and pull one out. When it's as you said, it's for positioning themselves for being first in the East says a lot going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and like you said, the big come from behind win. I mean, you have to be thinking at halftime they're down 25-14. You got to be thinking, Schmitty, the same Ottawa Red Blacks. And the thing that impressed me the most about this win is it wasn't like Hamilton gave it to them. Jeremiah Masoli, 23 for 34, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Alex Green had a good day on the ground with 61 yards. So in the end, this is more of Ottawa, playing a good Hamilton Tiger Cats team and getting a huge win.
Yeah, and we said this last week. It really sometimes comes down to what Ottawa team we were going to see, and it's funny because in this game, I mean, you really kind of saw both Ottawa teams early on not playing very well. Kind of watching, going, "Oh, this is going to be another one of those Ottawa not really coming to play," and then all of a sudden they turn it on, and here we are. And Hamilton did not play a bad game, but in the end, Ottawa just was able to come up with a few more plays. But if Ottawa can actually play to a consistent level, I mean, their chances are strong in the playoff. It's just you don't know what you're going to get from week to week.
Yeah, and all these teams are like this. So you're almost to the point where everybody that gets into playoffs has a chance on any given week of beating anybody. And the BC Lions are a team that over the last month and a half has played as good as anybody, and they punched their ticket to the playoffs over the weekend. DeVere Posey's 3 touchdowns in the third quarter led the Lions to a 42-32 victory over the Edmonton Eskimos. And right now, Schmitty, it looks like Edmonton is the odd man out in this situation.
Yeah, I was looking at the playoffs, and I mean, they're showing as eliminated right now.
Yeah.
Again, we didn't see that coming. But BC just, I know, you don't. There's many reasons, but at the end of the day, I mean, BC is is playing well, making plays. And we say this every year in the playoffs. Once you get to the playoffs, you never know what can happen. And we're seeing that. So going to get real interesting real fast.
Yeah, and the BC Lions, Robert, Travis Lulay, 14 for 21, 251 yards, 4 touchdowns. But the two that stood out to me here were Terrell Sutton, 16 carries, 97 yards. And, of course, as I mentioned before, DeVere Posey, 5 receptions for 113 yards. And right now, BC's playing as good as anybody.
I mean, they are, they turned it on, at the right moment, and as I said before, it's just the ground game or the running game, is what controls the clock, is what controls and I keep constantly talking about the psychology of the game. I played this game a long time, and anyone can go out there and be, a very good athlete. And I try and sit here and analyze the game, from a not a player standpoint anymore now, but an analyst standpoint. From the simple fact of, I understood when the game started, we were all even, but by halftime, by about the third quarter, if we were running the ball, pounding it down your throat, eventually we were taking your heart away. We were telling you that you're not good enough to stop us. So, so now that puts you on your heels and puts you in a position you're trying to decide what you need to do to try and stop us. The BC Lions going out there, being able to establish a ground game and being able to go out there, and put points on the board and control the clock and set, send a message out through the West that they're a team to be reckoned with, is going to carry big volume going into the playoffs for them, and good for them. But I'm also shocked to see a Mike Riley-led team, on the outside looking in, because that was not expected.
Now, let me ask you this, Robert. How much of this could be playing for Wally Buono? Because I know you've played for coaches like Coach Matthews, yes, that you had a ton of affection for, and do you think that plays into this at all?
Almost definitely. When you have a coach that you have an utmost respect for, and it's about pride. It's about going out there and giving your heart and soul and giving 110% for a coach that took a chance on you, that that invested time to be able to bring you on his team and accept you for the player you was and allow you a chance to play football. So it definitely makes a huge difference when you're playing for a coach like a Wally Bono, or a Don Matthews, So I definitely agree with that 100%.
All right, so next up we had, of course, the game of the week, which was Toronto against Montreal, which was to decide who was the worst team in the CFL, and Montreal didn't disappoint. My question, when I look at this, they lose to Toronto 26-22. Johnny Manziel, 23 for 30, 220 yards and a touchdown. He actually played fairly well, and I think over the last few weeks has gotten progressively better each game. What's your outlook for Johnny Manziel in the CFL possibly next year, Brian?
Well, it's hard to say because you got to give him something around him. There's really not a lot around him. You got to give him something. If they give him some weapons around him, then I think he could have an opportunity to be very good. But, you can't expect him to go out there as a one-man show and get it done. There's just nothing around him. Offensive line is not the greatest. He doesn't have a great weapons at the skills. There's only so much you can do. That it's all about as a quarterback spot you want to make people around you better, but if they're dog turds, what else are you going to do? You can't get them any better.
That is so eloquently put, Brian. All right.
I thought it was, too. I thought it was good.
On the Toronto side, this is a team that won the Grey Cup last year, Robert. You've got a history as an Argonaut. James Franklin, he played all right, but he throws 2 picks. This is a team that has some pieces, but not a lot anymore, I don't think. And when you look at them, I know everybody said, well, Ricky Ray was hurt, but there's no guarantee Ricky Ray is ever going to be Ricky Ray again with the age and all the other situations with this team. Where do you think Toronto stands headed into the offseason?
Toronto showed last year that they're a good, talented team capable of winning it all, and they did. But like anything in life, lightning in a bottle doesn't happen often, and lightning in a bottle happened for him last year, and they won the Grey Cup, but they came back to reality this year when they realized that other teams are just as talented, and with injuries and just not playing well in the dynamics of football. They just did not play that well this year. And on the outside looking in, going into the future this off season, they have to get some consistency. A quarterback is a main stable position, on a football team. And as you said, with Ricky Ray, the uncertainty of him coming back next year, to be at the helm, as a quarterback, leaves them up in the air. Do they go out there in free agency and get them a quarterback? Do they try and, wean Ricky Ray back into the starting lineup to be their leader again? There's so many more, intangibles that they need to address. Is James Wilder Jr., is he happy? Can they get him, into the ground game a lot more and get him established? Take a lot of pressure off the quarterback. So there's just so many things that Toronto has to focus on right now. It's going to be an interesting offseason for them.
All right, then we had a Saskatchewan Roughriders improve the record to 11-6 with a 29-24 victory on the road against the division-leading Calgary Stampeders, keeping the Riders in the mix for first place in the West Division. Quarterback Zach Collaros looked sharp all game long, completing 24 of 35 passes for 352 yards while putting together lengthy scoring drives against the Stamps' top-ranked defense. And I know when I did my power rankings for the CFL this week, Robert, one of the comments I made on there was I attributed this to boredom, the Montreal game, the loss after the Montreal game. But now I think we got to ask if there are some bigger questions to answer with this Calgary team.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the locker room of the Calgary Stampeders, during practice, this entire week. Guys are going to be sitting there asking themselves, what's going on? Mentally, they're on paper, they're the most dominant team, in the CFL. From organization down to the last player, but they're not playing like that, and they've got to right that ship, as the saying go, because it's gut check time now. The playoffs are about to start. They're into the part of the season that makes a difference now. It's lose or go home. So they've definitely got to find out and figure out what their problems are, because unlike when I played in Toronto, with the eras of a Flutie, a Pinball Clemens, a Mookie Mitchell, myself, even when we would have a bad game, we still understood that we were the most dominant team, and it was just, it was a blip on the screen. Well, this is not a blip on the screen for them. This is a whole entirely frantic screen going off, and they have to figure out what's going on, or they're going to be an early exit again.
Yeah, because this has went on for a month with him, Brian. And Brian, my only question to you is, which one of us picked Saskatchewan last week? Do you remember?
Well, if you're asking that question, it was probably you.
Oh, okay. Was it? I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. When we look at Saskatchewan, though, Brian, Zach Collaros, 24 for 35, 352 yards. And then you got Cameron Marshall running for almost 80 yards. You got Williams, 113 yards receiving. So this tells me this, and this was my comparison last week, was 31-0 against Winnipeg, with a team that's been consistent all year. I don't worry as much about, and I think that did play itself out this week.
Oh, absolutely, it did. And I want to kind of address two things here. One is, with Calgary, I know in your power rankings you attributed to boredom, but at some point,
I thought it was boredom. My question was, I don't think it's boredom anymore.
I agree. I don't think it's boredom anymore.
What'd you say, Robert?
I agree.
I'd say it's more complacency than boredom. As I said, you get to the point where you realize and understand that you're so dominant that you don't, it's just a mental thing that you don't go out there. You expect teams just to crumble because they know you're a dominant team. We got into that habit in Toronto, even in Baltimore. We got into that habit of understanding that we were on paper the more dominant team, so these teams were just going to crumble, and they didn't. And I think Calgary's gotten into that.
Yeah, and you look at it now, though. If they lose their last two games, they could lose the division, and they've got to go to Winnipeg, and then they go to BC. They very easily could lose those two games. So Saskatchewan has a chance to win the West now and beat a number one seed. So that brings us to this week's games, which we're going to start off with Friday night, 8:30 Eastern Time, the Calgary Stampeders at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And this is a big game for both teams because Winnipeg doesn't have anything clinched yet, even though they sit third just ahead of BC, but they have the same record. This is a huge game for both teams. Brian, does Calgary right the ship here, or does Winnipeg keep headed towards the playoffs?
I'm going to go with Winnipeg. I think, when you look at, whether it's boredom, complacency, whatever it is, Winnipeg has to feel a little bit more on an edge right now, and knowing that they have to have this, which I think they're going to be sky high for this. I still don't think Calgary is going to be able to match that intensity. So I'll take Winnipeg at home.
Yeah, Robert?
I'm going with Winnipeg also. I just think Calgary's problems are way more internal than they're letting on. It's like their organization right now is like, the head brass upstairs, as we called it as players, and upstairs meant the management, the coaches, the organization, and downstairs was the players, the grunt workers, Right now they're questioning themselves in the locker room, and that's not a good thing going into toward the end of the season. So I'm going to pick Winnipeg in this game. Until Calgary figures out who they are and what's going on, they're going to struggle. Yeah, as you said, they could lose these last two games easily.
All right, I'm going to go for them to lose at least this first one. I'm going with Winnipeg, too. I think Winnipeg's the better football team. I think they get the better players, Robert. I think Calgary, wins a lot just through reputation during the season. And I think we've seen that wear off. And when that wears off, it's real hard to get it back.
They're not. I mean, it's like, I tell my son this all the time. It's a Tiger Woods syndrome. When Tiger Woods was on top of his game, everyone feared him. When when they didn't fear him anymore, they caught up to him and surpassed him. Calgary's the same way. They don't fear him anymore.
Yeah. Then we've got Ottawa at Hamilton again, which now is a must-win for Hamilton. They're clinched the playoffs, but if they want the number one seed out of the East, they've got to win this game and force it to a final week to figure out what's going to go on here. Ottawa at Hamilton, Robert.
You know what? I'm going to go with Hamilton for the simple fact of, Ottawa's really not playing for anything, pride, and they're mentally they're preparing for the playoffs, and I'd be surprised to see a lot of Ottawa players playing late into this game. So if Hamilton can jump out early, I won't say it'd be a cakewalk because no game ever is, but it could be a good game for them, a precursor for them going to the playoffs. But I'm definitely going with Hamilton in this game.
All right, Brian, Hamilton, Ottawa.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Hamilton as well. Again, one of those games that maybe more important for them than it is for Ottawa, and I just feel again with Ottawa, you just don't know what team's going to show up, and so the fact that Ottawa won last week, I'm going to flip and say that Hamilton will win this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Hamilton just because I think these two teams are both very good. They're both up and down, and when you put that together, that just screams they're going to split these two games. Next up, we get the BC Lions at the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I'll go ahead and pick this one first. BC's already clinched the playoffs, as has Saskatchewan. I'm going to go with the Riders here, not for the simple fact that I picked them at the start of the year, but because they can still win this division. I think this game is hugely important for them, and I'm going to go with Saskatchewan here, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Saskatchewan at home. But I really think this has the makings to be a pretty good football game. But I think Saskatchewan is just a little bit better, and especially being at home, I'll take this. But I'm not going to be surprised if BC wins.
I wouldn't either anymore.
It's a hot team. That's a hot team right now. So
yeah, and the most amazing statistic while picking this game, Robert, is this: the two teams between them are 20-13. The Saskatchewan Roughriders have been outscored by 13 points this year. The BC Lions have been outscored by 14 points.
Wow. I mean,
that's a playoff team.
You don't at all. And you look at Saskatchewan. They're a strong team. Hot team right now. It's a home game for them. Playoff implications, things of that nature. But you know what? It's just BC is just a hot team right now. And I'm going to take the BC Lions. In what I won't even call it upset. It's an evenly matched game, but I just think BC just being a hot team, just playing with more pride, playing with more passion, playing with more intangibles, in the game of football, are just going to win this game.
Right.
And all the respect to that's one, but I think BC's going to win this game.
All right, then we have a rematch of the Toilet Bowl in the CFL as Toronto will go to Montreal to battle the Alouettes. Since I'm just going to give up the split thing because it seems like that's what's happened most of the year when teams have played back-to-back, I'm going to go with the Alouettes, Robert.
It's flip a coin up and pick your team. I'm going to go with Toronto only for the simple fact that right now they're just they're going to do everything to just showcase players to prepare for next year. Both teams are really truly preparing for next year. But Montreal is just a train wreck right now. They're trying to understand and trying to find themselves, but I just think Toronto, just with the pride of winning the Grey Cup last year, just not wanting to go out on a low note going into the offseason to get free agents to do everything they possibly can to create a better team for next year, they're going to find a way to win this game. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Montreal win this game because they're both the doormats of the CFL.
Brian.
I'm going to take Montreal. Pretty much the same reasons as Toronto won last week, so we'll take Montreal this week. But how do you watch this game? That's the question I have.
In my case, I won't. So.
I can say a lot of alcohol.
Yeah, because this is the thing. We're not going to talk about it a whole lot next week anyways. We'll make a couple jokes, and then we'll blow it off. So we don't need to watch it.
Yeah. Well,
you still got to pick it, Brian. You can't get away from it.
Oh, that's right. Montreal. We'll go with Montreal.
Okay. So we get two Montreals. Maybe that's the first time this year two people have picked Montreal on the same show. And it would be with good reason. All right, guys. My take right now is this. My power rankings, I did them, and you could have just thrown it in a hat and picked them out. If you had to rank the top two teams in the CFL right now, Brian, who would they be?
I would say Calgary and Saskatchewan. But even with that, we've joked about it so many times on this show. That number 2 spot is like a hot plate, man. Don't put your hand on it because you ain't going to stay long. So I'd say right now Calgary and Saskatchewan are the two top teams. But Ottawa winning. If Ottawa wins this week, then maybe now they're starting to get to where they're playing the way they should on paper going into the playoffs. But we could probably ask this question again next week, and maybe it'll change.
All right, Robert, top two teams right now in the CFL. Ooh, I think we lost Robert. Yep, Robert's phone dropped. All right, I think this. Right now, I would say Winnipeg and Saskatchewan with BC third and Calgary fourth. I think Calgary, the one thing you got to realize is when are they going to get all the receivers back they're missing? Because they've had a lot of injuries there, which are a lot of Calgary's problems. But right now, I don't think there's anybody playing better than Winnipeg, BC, and Saskatchewan. All right, we're going to wrap the show up for this week. We'll be back next Wednesday night to talk about all the Week 21 games. So make sure you check us out on thegruelingtruth.net live 9:30 Eastern Time next Wednesday night. So for Robert Drummond, Brian Schmidt, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.